Hello, World Civilization classes. Welcome to week 6. So as you see, I am putting up my boxes and I am getting ready to move to Santa Cruz, California, back into California uh, soon, in the middle of October. Actually, a little quicker than that. And so, yeah, keep life, keep your adventures going, right? So I will miss Portland, and you'll be hearing me talk about that off and on as we do these announcements, because my life is going to be a lot more disheveled until I am finally back in up and running in Santa Cruz. So anyhow, I just wanted to kind of just mention something as we're covering now. We've covered Hinduism, Buddhism, and now we're going into China and other parts of Asia. So I want to say that I'm really bummed that I can't develop my Asia section better than what I have now. When I first put these lectures together, I had a much more limited knowledge of, for example, Southeast Asia, and I never traveled there. A few years ago, before the pandemic, I spent 9 months in Asia, in various parts. My base was Thailand, and I went to the Philippines for a bit. My daughter is part Filipino, so I saw her family, and I went up in the north of the Philippines in Zambales. I was in Siem Reap, Cambodia, and I had an apartment there for 2 months, very close to Angkor Wat, this amazing temple that I visited a few times. Well, it's more than a temple. Angkor Wat's another topic I want to be able to cover more. And then I was in Hong Kong for about 3 months, and in the middle of the demonstrations. But I really loved it. And then from there I went to Macau also, which is next to Hong Kong. Okay, so here's the whole point that I want to say about this, is that I saw how important Buddhism and, to a certain extent, animism and Taoism could be in different parts of Asia, and even Hinduism. So what's interesting is Thailand, and to a certain extent Cambodia, but especially in Thailand, Hinduism left much more of a mark into the Buddhism than other parts of the Buddhist world. So you'll see Ganesh, there's the elephant god. He's very popular in Thailand. Now, that is traditionally a Hindu god, but he is incorporated into the Buddhist world in Thailand. And the other thing about this is that I think that all of these places that I was at, animism, or the belief in spirits, like nature spirits, and all of that was a part of Southeast Asia before the big religions come, such as Buddhism and Hinduism and so forth, plays a major role, and also gets mixed in with the Buddhism. And then I just really kind of learned that there's just something that's called a theory, and then there's a practice, right? So I'll give you an example. I always understood that Buddhism, it's all vegetarian. You're not supposed to eat meat. And then I was at a Buddhist temple in Thailand, and the nuns were serving pork soup. So I was like, well, and actually, I don't even know if I ever met a Thai vegetarian. And animal rights is not a super high on the priority list in Thailand, but officially Buddhism is a more or less an animal rights vegetarian like kind of ideology. And so it just made me kind of realize that there's ideals that a society has, and then there's the actual practice. It's just something I just kind of wanted to point out. So sometimes when we read in history about what these chroniclers would say that their societies were like, that's the person telling you maybe their ideal. So we always got to remember that. All right. Then the other thing is, it's interesting because like Buddhism doesn't really have a god, and Buddha is not a god. But when I was in Buddhist countries, people bow before Buddhas all the time and many statues. So here's what's interesting. I talked to my cousin's wife, she's Thai, and she will bow before the Buddha herself. And I remember I had a conversation with her and I said, is Buddha to you like a god? I kind of knew officially that the books say that they don't think that way, those practitioners of Buddhism in Asia. But I wanted to see what she had to say. So she first of all, she was looked a little confused because the questions were not something she was used to being asked. But she said, no, Buddha's not God. Like, he's not a god. I said, well, what do you think happens when you bow? Like when you have a statue of the Buddha and you're respectful and you're actually bowing a few times and you're doing these rituals, putting the incense on. What do you think is happening? Is Buddha listening to you? She looked more confused. No. Buddha's not listening to me. So then, I suppose for those of us in the West, when if you're a part of a Christian religion, a Jewish or a Muslim, God is intimately listening. You're having a conversation with God. If you're a Catholic and the saints are intervening, you're praying and you're hoping that they're going to intercede with God. Like, you're having a communion, and yet it doesn't appear that a lot of folks doing Buddhist rituals, it looks like they're doing the same thing that many other people are doing when it comes to bowing before an idol, as some would say, or a statue. But what is really going on? I kind of basically, my experience with what I saw with Buddhism in Asia is that it's almost like having health food, or like it's like a lifestyle that generates health. In other words, maybe something like this. Buddha is important. He's an enlightened one. And maybe another monk is, and there's some rules that you have to do, and there's karma. There is life after death. There is some sort of cosmic consequence to whatever you're doing. So these rituals that you're doing, you're rather putting yourself in the right path, and you're creating better health, a better future. Your economic life is going to go better. Your life is just going to go better in the way that maybe if you take like a kind of a class on how to make your life better, well, don't drink as much because then you can be healthier and blah, blah, blah. So what ends up happening is that you do all these rituals, and the idea is that you're tapping into the universe and the right way to do things, which henceforth will produce better results for you. And when you're not dealing with those things properly, it's like eating, ice cream for breakfast. It's like you might enjoy it, but it's not what you should be doing for yourself. I think that that's kind of, in a sense, like my impression. This is just my anecdotal impression about how Buddhism operates for people in, let's say, Thailand. And I noticed that even, I had a girlfriend at the time there, and she had a son, he's like 12, and I picked him up from school, and I saw the school rituals. There was a statue of the person who started the school, a wealthy Thai woman, and all of the students went and bowed before the statue. They aren't worshiping her. That woman is supposed to be revered as special, and the bowing of that is to pay respect. I think that in a certain sense, that's what you're also seeing with Buddhism and Buddhists and the bowing of from the statue. It's a different way of thinking about authority and important people, if you will, than the way that we do in the West, or especially America, where we don't like the idea of revering people per se like that. But that's something that's I think is really going on. So I just thought I would share those thoughts and stories on that. It's also very interesting, by the way, is that it's not a very literary world. Like when you're going to when I was in Hong Kong and you're going to a temple, a Taoist temple or a Buddhist. People are going there to do a ritual and often wanting to get something out of it, and nobody's asking you why you're there, and and there's not people sitting around quoting scriptures like, let's say, like a Christian or something. It's a very different realm of religious approach to religion and spirituality than what some of us have been accustomed to when you're here in the United States, in a Christian world in particular, as a majority of you will be in this class. So I just wanted to share those thoughts. Thanks for bearing with me if you actually listen to all that. And if you have any questions or more thoughts, please let me know. I want to always be there for you, even as I'm in the middle of my distractions here. And we'll be in touch. Have a great week.